Hello there, this is Cynthia McKinney with you, and we will be starting in just a few minutes. Hello, I'm glad to have you joining in today for this presentation. Actually, it will be a series that I will be doing with you here at the American Center, and we're going to be talking about stress and our health, and how to manage stress. So I'm excited to be sharing with you on this topic. This is one of the topics that I really enjoy talking about with people, and helping people to find ideas and ways to manage stress in today's world. So the first session today is going to be gaining more understanding about stress. And as we are looking at our topic today, um, I want us to even answer the question that some may have as to, well, why should I even think about stress management? Sorry, I kind of jumped ahead there. Didn't mean to do that. Let's go back, and because I want us to definitely answer that question of why we want to understand stress management. I found something that I thought was very interesting in the Vietnam Express International. It was from an article in 2019. And in that article, the Ministry of Health, they made some statements that I thought was very interesting about stress in Vietnam. And the statements that they made was that stress is causing mental illnesses among 15% of Vietnam's 95 million people, especially the youth. And so when you look at the math and you kind of work out the math of what 15% would be, that's over 14 million people in Vietnam that are being affected by stress in a negative way, and especially among the youth. And the ministry also said in this article that mental disorders that are related to stress have increased strongly in recent years. So, stress management, learning about stress, learning how to manage stress in our lives is very significant, very important for us. And even in the country of Vietnam, people are facing the problems of stress. So we want to understand stress. That's the first thing, the first step we want to take in finding some help with how to manage stress. The first step is we want to understand what is this thing called stress. And there's four statements I want us to look at about stress. The first statement is that, stress is something that produces pressure. And that pressure is both physical pressure and mental pressure. And stress produces like an emotional and a mental strain on us. It uses up our energy, and it makes us feel our energy level to feel low because there's this strain that's being put on us. And stress can impact our physical health. It impacts our performance. It impacts our emotions, and it impacts different functions of our body. And then the last statement is that stress can be positive. Stress is also something that can be negative, and it is something that can be positive. So what will we discuss today? Well, we're going to discuss how stress happens to understand that more. Then we're going to understand different types of stress, and then how stress affects our health. We want to understand that more about how stress affects our health. So the first thing I want us to think about or to look at is how stress happens. And there is this reaction that we have, this response that our bodies have. It's called the fight or flight response. And this is really the stress reaction in our physical body. And this is something that's natural. It's something that it's something that just naturally happens. Many times I say it's hardwired in us. And what I mean by that is that it's something that just, it happens without us even thinking about it. Really all the time. It's almost an automatic reaction that we have. So this is how this response happens. We are faced with something that we perceive, we see it as a danger or a threat. And when we perceive it, when something happens that we think it's a danger to us or it's a threat to us, then there are hormones or chemicals that are in our brain that get released into our body. And this is an automatic thing that happens in our body. And these hormones or these chemicals get our body ready to respond to this danger, to this threat. So when these hormones get released, then our heart starts to beat faster. Our breathing gets faster. Our muscles will tense up. Our immune system and our digestive systems, they begin to slow down because everything is being focused on being ready to act. And even our body begins to sweat. So we are ready for action. We're ready to either fight the danger or we're ready to flee, to run away from the danger to safety. And so this again is something very natural. It's a natural reaction that happens in our body, and it happens for our own survival. Now you can imagine that as this happens, there is a stress that's happening in our physical body. Now, on the other side of this reaction is another response. And this is called the relaxation response, or we call it the recovery period. And this is also part of that natural response that happens with the fight or flight response. This is when the danger is past, the threat is gone, it's over. And then our body begins to respond to the danger being finished. It's over. It's completed. And so at this point, our body, the different functions of our body become normal again. And it takes about 20 to 60 minutes for this to happen after the threat is gone, after the danger is gone. So our heartbeat begins to calm down. It begins to become normal again. Our breathing calms and becomes normal. Our muscles will begin to relax. Our immune system and our digestive systems will return back to normal function, and the sweating stops. So our body just begins to calm down, it begins to relax, and it recovers from uh, this intense mode of being ready to fight or to run, and it becomes relaxed again. And so that's the normal way for that fight and flight response to happen. That there's something that triggers a sense of danger or threat. And then our bodies have this fight or flight response that happens. And so stress goes way up. We go up with our stress. And then once the danger is over, then our body begins to go down. The stress level goes down, and we're back in a normal function. We're back in that more relaxed function of our body. And so it's our bodies are designed to have this stress reaction and then to have this recovery. So we have this stress reaction, and then our bodies relax and recover. Now, the question that we are faced with today, especially, is what happens when stress continues, when stress doesn't stop. And so there's no clear point to where our body knows the stress is over, and our bodies can relax again, and there can be this recovery period. And so this is the big question we have to ask ourselves and be aware of, is what happens when stress is chronic or stress is long term? It doesn't stop. It keeps going and going and going. Now, another side of stress that we need to understand is this side where stress can be good, where stress can be positive. And this is a type of stress that is stress to achieve. And this is called good stress. Now, this kind of stress motivates us. It motivates us to reach goals. This stress also activates chemicals or hormones in our brain. But the way that these chemicals, the way these chemicals influence our body is a little different. It's a lower level of stress, and it doesn't create this heightened intensity of this racing heart or this breathing really fast. But it does cause us to feel stimulated and to feel motivated and to want to achieve this goal that is before us. And so when we feel motivated, when we feel excited, and we have this confidence to achieve a goal, then that's a positive side of stress. It's motivating us to achieve a goal. And it causes us to feel excitement and to feel satisfaction. We don't feel the distress, or we don't feel threatened, but we feel excited about reaching this goal. It gives us a sense of, oh, I want to do this. I feel satisfied with this. I feel motivated to want to put energy into reaching this goal. Now, when stress is negative, that's when stress is not helping us, but it is hurting us. It is causing us to feel negative pressure. Instead of feeling excitement, we feel like we are overwhelmed. We feel like it is too much for us. And so I think, there's definitely a line of where stress can be positive to help us achieve a goal, but also when stress becomes distress, when we begin to feel overwhelmed, that's when stress has become something negative for us. And I noticed it's a question here, which thank you. I love the chat and I love to just kind of see comments and questions. So this is great. It says, to what extent is stress positive? Well, I think I've answered that, is that stress is positive when it's helping us achieve a goal, when it's helping us feel motivated, that we're motivated to want to achieve something, to want to make a change, to want to accomplish something, and there's an excitement and a sense of satisfaction, a motivation. That's when that can be positive. That's when it's a positive kind of stress. When we begin to feel overwhelmed, when we begin to feel this racing heart and this, our breathing is speeding up, and we don't want to eat, or we're eating too much, or our stomach is hurting, things like that. Those are indicators that the pressure of that stress is too much. It's not positive anymore. It's become distress. It's become something negative in your life. And I noticed someone else here, what about stress and bipolar 1? Well, wow, that's a good question. And bipolar is definitely a mental health diagnosis. And that does add stress, and the bipolar diagnosis will add a whole nother dimension to that. And I'm not sure if I can really answer that specifically for you in this presentation. But yes, stress and having a mental health diagnosis, especially bipolar, that's something where it's not just normal stress. This is something that is more, it needs more help. And I would say, if you have the ability to seek, counseling, to seek out someone who's a therapist, that would really be probably a good direction to go. Now, some of the things that we're going to talk about with stress management, I think they can be helpful for everyone, even those that may have a mental health diagnosis. There can be some positive results that we can all have from just simple stress management techniques. And at the same time, it may not, if you have a mental health diagnosis, such as bipolar 1, you may still need more professional intervention to really specifically tackle that situation. Now, let's look at types of stress as far as short-term and long-term. Now, again, in the fight or flight response, that normal response that we're hardwired with, that's like automatic in us as human beings for our survival, that response is more under the acute or short term. That's where it helps us and doesn't hurt us as much. because it gives us the readiness to tackle a danger or a threat. But then there's a clear time when that threat is over, and our brain, our body gets the signal that the threat is over, and now the body can relax. And so basically, the stressor happens, an event, a trigger of some kind of danger or threat. It happens. And our brain, it gets the message that this is happening. And then those hormones, those chemicals are released. And the stress reaction happens. The fight or flight response happens. Then the stressor is resolved. The danger is over, the threat is over, and then your body gets that signal, gets that message, and the stress reaction comes to an end, and the relaxation response takes place. The body functions go back into a normal place again. Now, the chronic or long-term stress, this is when the stress, the trigger of that stress is constant. The source of that stress, it's constant, or it's something that happens continually, or it never really is resolved. It never stops. So instead of having the stress reaction and then the relaxation, it goes up like this and then it goes down. When it's chronic stress, when it's long-term stress, what happens is there's something that triggers that sense of danger, that sense of threat. It triggers that fight or flight response in us, and it goes up. But instead of going down, it just stays up, and maybe even goes up further. But it stays. It's like this constant stress. There's never a clear signal that the danger is over, that the threat is over. And we stay in this place of just this constant or long-term stress. And this is when the body doesn't go back into its normal function. So the body doesn't get that signal, okay, the stress is over, the danger is over, the threat is over, let's go back into a normal function, a relaxed function. And so what happens is that the body stays in more of this heightened function, the heart beating faster, the maybe breathe, you don't have this relaxed breathing, your muscles are tense, they stay tense. There are those kind of reactions in our body, and our body doesn't relax and go back into more of a normal function. And that automatic relaxation, it doesn't happen automatically. And this is the stress that really is the stress that affects our health the most. This is the stress that we need to really be aware of the most and understand, how do we manage this kind of stress? We will always have those moments of the fight or flight response, because that is part of how we are equipped to survive. But as long as we can go back into a relaxed state, we can go back into our body functioning in a normal way, then it's not a danger to our body. But when we have stress that stays at this higher place and we never get the signal, our body never gets the signal to go back into a relaxed place, then that's when the stress becomes more negative and more dangerous for our health. So let's take just a minute and let's think about some scenarios just to kind of bring this information together. So let's think about scenario number one. Let's say you are on your motorbike driving home from work. The traffic is busy, and there are several times that you were almost hit, but you were able to avoid it. So several times that you almost had an accident, someone almost hit you, but you were able to avoid it. You finally get home safely and you feel this big relief, and you just want to sit down for a few minutes and just relax. So let's think about this scenario. What kind of reaction did you have while you were driving home? Well, I think probably most of us would say we had a stress reaction. We had a fight or flight reaction. Your heart may have been beating faster. You could imagine that your muscles were tense. Maybe your breathing was much more shallow and faster breathing. It wasn't relaxed. You probably could feel that tension in your body. Now, when you got home, what kind of reaction did you have when you got home? Well, I can, as I was reading it, and I got to the point where it says you finally get home safely and you feel a big relief. It's like there's just this reaction of, oh, I'm home. I'm out of that traffic. I'm home safe. So there's this relaxation response that happens. So we could say, is this good stress or is this a negative stress? Is this distress? Did you feel distress? Did you feel tension and a negative stress in this? And I would say, yeah, this is kind of negative. This wasn't something that motivated me totally, something I enjoyed. This was more of a negative stress. Is this short term or long term? Well, in this situation, because you had the event that caused the stress, and then you had an end to that event. You got home, you got out of the traffic, and so you were able to have a point where you relaxed. The stress left you. You were able to relax. Your body relaxed. So that would be short term. It didn't continue on and on and on. It ended. And so that would be a short term stress. Now let's go to scenario number two. Let's say you've been given a goal at work to reach, and when you reach this goal, you will get a bonus at work. The goal is challenging, and you feel confident and you feel motivated about accomplishing this. You actually feel really excited about this and feel excited about getting the bonus. So, what kind of reaction are you having towards the goal? Well, this reaction would be that positive stress. It would be a reaction that you feel motivated to start working towards this goal. And so there's something that kind of drives you or it motivates you to want to accomplish this. But it's a positive stress. Because how does this reaction affect you? Well, you feel confident, you feel motivated, and you feel excited. So you don't feel overwhelmed by it. You don't feel distressed by it, but you feel motivated to want to accomplish this. So is this good stress or negative stress, distress? Well, this would be the good stress. Is this short-term or long-term stress? Well, again, I would put this under short-term because there's going to be a beginning and there's going to be an end. You know, there will be a point that you will accomplish the goal. You will, and there's a bonus at the end of this. So there's going to be a beginning to this, and there's a definite end to this. Now, scenario number 3. Let's say you are in a 3-month class that is a big problem for you. This class is a big problem for you. You're not making good grades. You keep thinking about failing the class, and you're worrying about this. This is always on your mind. After 6 weeks, you're noticing that you're having a headache almost every day. So again, what kind of reaction are you having with this class? Well, there is definitely a stress here. There's tension. There's, there's not a relaxed feeling. There's not, your mind isn't relaxed. Your body's not relaxed. And you may not always recognize it, but because there's that tension there, that stress there, there are those chemicals in your body that are causing your body to not function in a normal, relaxed way. And is this reaction ending and giving you a time to relax? Well, when you think about this, this is something, it's always there. You keep thinking about this. You keep thinking and it's negative feelings and worrying about this. It's constantly on your mind and a constant worry. It's always on your mind. So there's no sense of relaxing from this. This is a stressor this is something that has caused stress to rise in your life, and it continues. It's just staying. It's constant, day after day after day after day after day. And then, is this good stress or is this negative stress, distress? Well, this is negative stress because it's producing some negative feelings for you. It's producing distress. And is this a constant long-term stressor? Well, at this point, it would be more of a constant stressor because it's day after day after day. You're always thinking about it, and the stress stays high. There's no time where you're relaxing and you're feeling a relief from it. And also, that this is more negative and it's causing some problems because you're starting to have some symptoms. You're starting to have a headache almost every day. And that's one of the symptoms when stress is starting to become a problem to our health. Yes, I see. When do we do the, yes, and I will talk about the management of stress, and we will get to that. Um, and yes, and let's go to our next slide. Again, I think one of the understandings when we are wanting to make a change, when we are wanting to find help in a situation, and we're wanting to make a change, like how to manage stress, how to find help to manage stress in our lives. One of the important things is to lay a foundation of understanding, what is this thing that's happening to me? How does this affect me? The more we can understand it, the better we will be at finding ways to manage it. Managing stress, there are some wonderful tools, there's some wonderful tips, and at the same time, it's not magic. And the more we understand about it, the more we will be equipped, the more we will have tools that will help us to manage it more successfully. So how does stress affect our health? I mean, why should we even worry about it? How does it affect our health? Well, again, it's the negative stress that's long-term or chronic. It's that stress that we have the stress and it stays high. It stays up here and there's no relaxing from it. There's no relief from it. That's when the stress becomes a problem. And it puts that kind of stress puts a strain on our body over time. And this strain contributes to several diseases or problems in our health. And you can see this diagram of the body over here. And there are certain areas in our body that I've marked because these are the areas that specifically, research has shown that stress affects this. And our brain is one of those areas that gets affected by stress. Our emotions get affected by stress. Our sleep is affected by stress. Being able to sleep well, being able to rest well, that can be affected by stress. Our immune system, that system in our body that fights disease, that system in our body that helps us to overcome infections and different diseases, that's our immune system. And so stress will affect that. Stress will have a negative effect on that system. Our heart can be affected by stress. Our liver and how much sugar it will put into our bloodstream is affected by stress. Our digestion, our stomach, and how our appetite and different things with our digestion of our food is affected by stress. Now let's look at some specific things in these areas. When we look at our heart, we're looking at, the stress reaction, that fight or flight reaction, is to cause our heart to increase, our heart rate to increase. And if that heart rate, if we don't relax, that heart rate can stay at a higher level than what is normal, than what is at a relaxed state. And so when our heart works harder, it can cause some problems. And it can increase the risk of people having high blood pressure. It can increase the risk of heart attacks. And so those are some of the things that we know that stress can impact with our heart. And then a second area is called diabetes, and that's the blood sugar. That's the sugar in our blood and how well our body can manage that sugar. And if there's too much sugar in our blood, then it hurts our body. And that's when diabetes happens, a diagnosis of diabetes. And so the liver is the organ in our body that will release that sugar. That and with stress can cause our liver to release higher levels of sugar into our body. So that means that stress can increase the risk for diabetes type 2. Our immune system, that system in our body that fights sickness, that fights disease, fights infection, helps us overcome the infections, overcome different diseases. So stress can weaken our immune system, that chronic stress, and it can cause us to become more vulnerable to infections. It becomes harder for our bodies to fight infections. That's one of the things that for me, I have had to understand about stress when I have been in situations where I have overloaded my schedule and I'm staying up late, I'm getting up early, uh, many days in a row, and I'm pushing and pushing and pushing to meet deadlines or to accomplish different things, that after a few weeks of doing that, if I don't stop and give my body better rest and relax, then I notice I begin to have problems with getting a cold. And I begin to have cold symptoms, a runny nose or different things, and I realize I've seen that different times, that if I push my body too much with too much stress, that I begin to have problems with getting colds. So I've realized it causes my immune system to not be able to fight off uh, like a cold or an infection. And another area is our digestion. So stress can cause there to be increased acid in our stomach. And that can cause us to have heartburn. We can have more stomach aches because of the stress. And there can just be other kind of stomach problems or digestion problems that we have. And then again, some other areas is like our sleep. We can have problems with our sleep because of the chronic stress. We can begin to have headaches and other kind of aches like back aches because of the tension that our muscles are staying tense most of the time. And then it can affect things in our mental health, like with depression, and it can cause us to have anxiety, become more fearful, and to have more anxious, worried kind of thoughts, and just cause us to have a real depressed, sad kind of mood. So again, these are just ways that stress affects our health. And so this just helps to lay a good foundation for us to want to do the work to figure out, how do we manage stress in our lives? How do we help get off of this chronic stress plateau, this chronic stress level, and learn how to help our bodies begin to relax? Because that's really what we have to learn to do, is how to identify stress, what's causing the stress, and then to match some good management strategies, some good management options to what's causing the stress in our life. When I think of chronic stress, I think of this story. I think of the story of the frog in a pot of boiling water. I don't know if any of you have heard this story. This is a story that I heard years ago, and it's something that I think about at times. So the story is that, if you take a frog and you put that frog in a pot of water, but the water is a cool temperature, just a normal temperature. so that the frog doesn't have any worries. The frog may just sit in the water. And then if you begin to slowly heat the water, just very slowly, you heat the water. And that frog, that frog will stay in that pot. This is how the story goes, is the frog would stay in that pot because it begins to get comfortable and used to that water. And the water is heating slowly, slowly, slowly. And he doesn't realize how hot the water is getting. And so the frog isn't aware of the danger it's in because it's used to the water, and over time it has just slowly, slowly, slowly gotten used to the water getting a little bit more warm, a little bit more warm, a little hotter, a little hotter, a little hotter, until finally the water is boiling. And at this point, the frog isn't aware of the danger it's in, and it'll stay in the pot until it's boiled to death instead of jumping out. So again, understanding what stress does to us can help us recognize symptoms that are in our body. And we can become aware that, oh, I'm in a boiling pot of water, or this pot of water is getting hotter and hotter, and I have to find a way out of this stress. I have to find a way to manage this stress so that I can protect my health. So as we are kind of coming to the close of what we're talking about today, I want us to think about the symptoms. How do we escape that pot of boiling water? We have to understand the symptoms of stress. Again, remembering that awareness is the first key to us making a change and to us finding help. And there's three main areas that stress will affect us in. Stress will affect us physically in our body. Stress will affect us emotionally, and stress will affect our mental function. And when we begin to see symptoms of stress in any of these areas, then that's a good sign that the stress is having a negative impact on us, and we need to change something. We need to begin to manage the stress and to decrease the tension and the stress that we are experiencing. So physically, these are not all of the symptoms, but these are some of the symptoms. So physically, we can have headaches. We can have different body pains, back aches, maybe up here in our shoulders and stuff. We just feel a lot of tension or aches. We may just feel low energy. We may begin to have stomach problems. Emotionally, we may have just this low confidence. We may feel just overwhelmed, like we can't keep doing this. I can't keep doing this. We may feel depressed. We may feel fearful or anxious or worried all the time, not just occasionally, but this is something that's constant. It's all the time. And then our mental function. Our thoughts are more negative. There's this constant thoughts of worry. And we may even begin to forget things. It's hard to maybe, remember everything we need to do, and it may be, we may start feeling like it's hard to make decisions, or we don't even want to make decisions because we feel so overwhelmed. So our mental function isn't as sharp, isn't as strong as it used to be. So as we are going forward in this series, we're going to have three other sessions. And in our second session, we're going to identify stressors, or learn how to identify things that are causing stress in our life. And then begin to look at what are some ways to manage stress. And actually in session 2 and then in session 3, we're going to be looking at different ways to manage stress, some different options, and also practicing some of those options during our time together. And then the last session, we're going to talk about how do we create a stress management plan. So how do we bring all of this information together and create a plan for ourselves individually that can be successful, that we can use to manage stress in our lives? Now, I want to do a quick review, and then we have one more thing after our quick review that I'd like to do. If you can stay on for a little bit longer. First, as we review, in Vietnam, mental disorders related to stress have strongly increased in the recent years. And the stress reaction is caused by the fight or flight response, and the relaxation reaction will naturally follow when the danger or the threat is past. Stress to achieve helps us to reach goals and is positive stress. Chronic or long-term stress puts a strain on our body over time. Chronic stress can cause health problems. Stress can affect our physical health. I think actually here I would put our heart. Stress can affect our heart, our immune system, diabetes, our digestion, and our sleep. And we can have symptoms of stress in three main areas. We can have symptoms of stress in our physical body, physically. We can have symptoms of stress in our emotions, and we can have symptoms of stress in our mental function. Now, as we are going into this next slide, I also just want to open up, and if any of you, if there's any other questions, please put it in the chat and we can look at those real quick before we take 3 minutes to relax. That's the last thing that we will do today in our session, is to have 3 minutes to relax together. And I know that there is this one question on what is the meaning of homeostatic machinery and how is it involved in stress? I don't really know that. That is something I could look into. Homeostatic, I think when I see that word, I'm thinking of something that's in a balanced place, but I'm not really sure. I would say this: when we are talking about stress, we are talking about our bodies functioning in a more balanced, when we're talking about stress management, we're talking about finding a way to help balance our life, to help balance the function of our body so that it's in a more normal state and a more balanced state. But I don't know if that's exactly what homeostatic machinery is referring to or not, but that's what I think of when I see that term, is something that's balanced. It's about working in a balanced state. Any other questions before we take our 3 minutes to relax? This is a time, there's some music that I'm going to play, and I think you're going to be able to hear it. You should be able to hear the music. But this is just a time for you to just quiet yourself. This is one of the stress management strategies, techniques, one of the tools. And just to take, even if it's 3 minutes, to be able to calm ourselves, to be able to relax ourselves. And one of the ways we can do that is through music, is through even images, like there's pictures in here that can be very calming kind of pictures. And then how we breathe, starting to take slow breaths in and out. And then as you are breathing out, to just pay attention to your shoulders and just relax. As the air is going out, then just relax your shoulders, like you're releasing tension from your shoulders. And we're going to do this for the next 3 minutes. You can close your eyes if that helps you. Or you can keep them open. There are pictures that will be on this video also that could be very calming and pleasant pictures to look at. Oh, sorry. Well, I hope you were able to relax for that 3 minutes. And that is something we'll do again. And remember, we will have 3 more sessions, and starting next week, we will talk about identifying or understanding what causes stress in our lives and beginning to look at ways to manage that stress. And it was great to have you with me today. I'm glad you could join in. And if there's any last questions, we can do any last questions real quick. Okay, it looks like there's not any more questions. Again, it's been great to be with you, and just take that thought with you that you want to manage stress, and just find even 3 minutes to just calm yourself, just to close your eyes, maybe listen to some music that's just very calming to you, very pleasant to you, and just breathe in and breathe out and just relax your shoulders. That can do a lot to just to relieve tension and stress in a short time. Thanks so much for joining in.